All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this weekly Bible study during the day of rest. We're going to go over week 2, which was Genesis 12 through 29. And if you want to keep following with us, the next week is going to be 30 through 50. Now, we've already done this a few times, and those had to be scrapped because they kept getting canceled in the middle of this. So just bear with us. Sorry it didn't come out yesterday. We were planning on doing it yesterday, but it just didn't turn out that way. But we're going to summarize this, and then we're going to talk about key points, and then we're going to do some questions. That's going to be the format of this video. But join us. Have a great time. So to begin with is the summary. And to summarize this, it begins with Abram, and it ends with Jacob and Esau. Specifically with Jacob marrying Leah and Rachel. And in between that, you get things like Sodom and Gomorrah and with Lot. You get Isaac and Rebekah. You get their multiple lies about who their wives are. You get...
Or who their sister is.
You get a bunch of family deception, family tricks, family drama. Just tons of different stuff going on that shows they were dysfunctional, but God still chose this family. And Abraham trusted God, and it was credited to him as righteousness because there was the sacrifice of Isaac also going on in the middle of this sequence of events that God, of course, stopped. But we're going to go more over that when we actually get into the nitty-gritty details of it. So we're going to start that right now. So what do you have for us?
First, yesterday we did the drawing for the jewelry set for last week, and that was won by Andrea Rader. So if she will send me her address, I will get that to her. This week we're going to do probably something Valentine-y. I'm not sure. We've got some cute little heart suckers that I've made. Earrings, or heart sucker earrings. Those are so adorable. I'll make myself some of those. And then we have different hearts that I will make either a necklace or a bracelet. But I'll show you what the giveaway is when we start that. And you can enter that by subscribing. If you've already subscribed, you can share one of our videos. You can like and comment one of our videos. Anything that you do to help our channel grow, we will really appreciate it. And we'll put your name in a drawing for a jewelry set. So like Reagan said, we have done this video twice already. I mean, we've spent like 2 hours or longer doing videos that didn't come out, that got cut off after so long and we didn't even know it. So forgive us if we don't cover everything because we've covered it so much we may forget to do it. But so we start out with Abraham, who's rich. He has livestock, silver, and gold. He's very wealthy. But at 75 years old, and Sarah's 65 years old, they're told by God to leave Haran. And they do. They immediately obey God. That's one thing that I love about Abraham. Sarah is actually Abraham's half sister on his father's side. So Abraham, Sarah, and Abraham's nephew Lot all go close to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Mm-hmm. And he tells Lot that he can have whatever land he wants, and of course Lot picks the best for himself because he's kind of selfish. But the Bible tells us that the men of Sodom were evil. And so we all know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. They were extremely evil. I mean, even like at the very beginning of this, Lot gets kidnapped. And Abraham has to send 318 of his men to go and get him back. I mean, it's just a very evil place. Reagan is going to tell you about
Melchizedek.
I could never say his name. How Abraham gave
Melchizedek.
Yeah, a tenth of everything.
So yeah, when you would tithe to someone, it represented they are a priest. They're someone important. They're someone powerful. But it definitely represented priestly office too. So by this action, Abram is showing a servant-like attitude to this Melchizedek, who is a priest of the Most High God. So, and he's also a king. So people see this as a typological or a foreshadowing of Jesus, because he is a king and a priest. And also the New Testament picks up on this with the priesthood of Melchizedek and assigning Jesus to that priesthood, as well as he's kind of a mysterious character. He just appears. He's a very powerful, influential character that is a priest of the God Most High before Abram was even a follower of the God Most High, probably, considering he didn't even know Abram until this time. So then he comes out and he blesses Abram. And by giving the blessing to Abram, he is showing power over Abram, because usually the person with more power would give the blessing, as we see in the rest of these stories when Isaac blesses Jacob and Esau, or Jacob, and Abraham, and there's blessings that the patriarchs give out, but instead of the patriarch blessing this dude, he blesses the patriarch. So it's very interesting, just the dynamics here and how it foreshadows Jesus.
And it shows that he's over Abraham, which is wild since Abraham is rich and has a lot of power.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's also the king of Salem,
right,
which is peace, which means peace, shalom. And Salem is thought to have become Jerusalem later.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so God is telling Abraham that he's going to be the father of many nations, and they wait and nothing happens. So Sarah takes it upon herself to give her maid, her servant, to Abraham as a wife so that she can have a baby for him. And at 86 years old, Abraham is 86 years old, and Hagar gives birth to Ishmael. So Hagar is the servant he takes as a wife, and Ishmael is his first son, which later he doesn't even acknowledge, does he, as a first son? Because he says that Isaac is his one and only son. So anyway,
if you acknowledge him as a son, he would get inheritance.
Right. So Sarah and Abraham had been in Canaan for 10 years when Sarah decided to give him Hagar. So sometimes we'd say she's not very patient, but 10 years, I mean, I don't know. I'm not very patient either, because I don't know. That's a long time. Yeah, Abraham means father of a multitude. And then next you hear about how the covenant is formed with God and Abraham, and all the circumcision of the men and the boys. And Sarah is 89 years old when she becomes pregnant. And there's, angels that come and are talking to Abraham, and one of them is the Lord, and he asks, why did Sarah laugh? Because she has laughed when she hears him say that she will be pregnant and have a son by that time next year. And when confronted about it, she says, I didn't laugh. So she just lies. I mean, there's a lot of lies between Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca. And mainly, these lies are just because they're scared. In both of the situations where they lie, it's because they're afraid of something. So, that's probably why a lot of people lie, when you're afraid to tell the truth. So these three men come to Abraham. Two are angels, one is the Lord, and I'm not sure if Abraham knows they're angels yet.
He definitely knows they're special.
He does by the end of the conversation, because they're talking about how Sodom is going to be destroyed, how they're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Gomorrah. And so Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised. Is that correct? That's what I wrote down. So I'm guessing he is. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. 99 years old. And you have to go through a circumcision. Whew. Alright, so we are in Sodom and Gomorrah now, and Sodom and Gomorrah, am I saying it wrong? We're in Sodom and Gomorrah now, and here comes the two angels, and Lot is at the gateway, and they're talking about staying in the square, and he's like, no, just basically it's not safe. So I don't know if they say that. I can't remember if Lot tells them that, but he says, come to my house, and he fixes a feast for them. And while they're in there, the Bible says that all of the men come to the door, basically beating on the door, telling Lot to give those men to them so they can have sex with them. And that is just unbelievable. But even worse is when Lot says, no, I have 2 virgin daughters. You can have them. You can do whatever you want to them. Just leave my guests alone. That to a woman, that's just unbelievable. But I don't know if it goes along with the hospitality that they did back in that day, or the fact that women weren't considered much of anything other than property. I'm not sure how that comes about, but it just seems like the most vile thing in my view. I do love how the angels struck all those men blind. Good for them. And we talked about how it was an outcry from the cities, and that's why God was coming down to see this and to decide the punishment, and he had decided that the punishment would be complete destruction of them. And we talked about how what the outcry was, that it was probably the angels talking with God about it, saying this is a horrible place.
Could be the angels.
These are horrible places.
I think it is the angels, but there's another view that says it's the personification of sin.
That God is hearing.
like basically their sin is coming to the attention of God is what the metaphor means.
Yeah, but how's it coming to the attention of God?
That God is just aware of it.
Of course, but he said there's an outcry.
I know. It's a personification of sin in that view.
So God has compassion.
I still think that it was the angels.
Yeah. God has compassion on Lot. And you and I have talked about that. Like, I think that's mainly because of who his uncle was, not because of him, because I just don't think he was a great guy. I think he was pretty selfish. I mean, he probably had some good traits, though.
I mean, he's the only one that didn't want to have sex with the men, so.
Yeah, so, I mean, he had some good traits. Anyway, so Lot's wife, we know, disobeys the angels and turns around and looks back. And
the rest of his family don't listen, really.
Yeah, they
think he's joking.
Yeah, the sons-in-laws don't come. The fiancés, because they're engaged to his daughters, they don't come because they think he's just messing with them or whatever. And the wife turns back around. She turns up a pillar of salt. It's just him and his daughters left. They don't seem like the greatest of people because they get him drunk and have sex with him so that they can have children. Like, just seemed like a very selfish thing. A really sick thing to us, but probably not that sick back in those days. It was pretty sick.
That's why they had to get him drunk, because he wouldn't have did it willingly.
Right. And they did that while they're in a cave, because they're living in the mountains in a cave. They do get pregnant and have 2 sons, and they go on in this time to tell us who those are and who those are the founders of, which are the Moabites and the Ammonites. So God tells us that Abraham is a prophet, and this whole story is about each time that they go into a city, he tells Sarah to not tell them that she is his wife, but only to mention the part about her being his sister, so that he will be safe and not killed, because she has such great beauty that all of these men are desiring her. And we talked about this in the 2 other videos we did, and I've said I would really love to see her. I would love to see this lady who's 89 years old that kings and pharaohs want to marry her. And you said an important point I didn't consider, and that's that her husband is very wealthy, so there's a pull on it for the financial gain, but there's also the very first thing they're seeing is her beauty, because she's supposed to be an unbelievably beautiful woman. But 89 years old, and like I said, I read somewhere, not in the Bible, but somewhere else, that was talking about Sarah and how she probably looked like a young bride, so like a very young woman, probably teens or 20s, and that even at 89, because they were saying before she had Isaac that she still looked almost like a young bride, and I don't know what they meant by that, but I'm assuming like a younger person, not anywhere near 89. So that is, to a woman, I'm just like, my gosh, that is amazing. I wish God did that with us nowadays. So then, of course, the king finds out that that's not just Abraham's sister, but his wife. And he gives him 1,000 pieces of silver to kind of keep from being in trouble for...
It's evidence that he didn't have
sex with her, yeah. And he had made all of that family, all the women, barren. So once Abraham prays for him, then God takes that curse off of them. So after this, Sarah becomes pregnant. And at that time, Abraham is 100 years old and Sarah is 90 years old. So here she is having a baby at 90 years old. She has Isaac, and he's circumcised at 8 days old. And during the time that he was weaned, on the day that he was weaned, Abraham did a great feast for Isaac. And to celebrate that, and Reagan and I were talking, I'm guessing that you couldn't really celebrate birthdays probably back then, because they didn't have calendars and stuff, so they probably celebrated just important events like the weaning of your child and, their weddings.
When they become adults.
Yeah.
Which was typically around 13.
And so that he threw a great feast, and during that great feast, Sarah saw that Ishmael was mocking Isaac. Was he mocking Isaac? And she informed Abraham that she wanted him and Hagar gone, like send them away. And of course Abraham did, because God also approved it. Like,
God said do it.
Yeah.
He'll take care of her.
Yeah.
But she's right. He can't stay, because he'll be co-heirs, and they'll be fighting, and there'll be conflict.
Yeah, and the events wouldn't be fulfilled the way.
And Abraham obviously loved them. He said he was distressed over the fact that until God said, "I'll take care of them," then Abraham gives them the stuff they need to go. But she doesn't have the same understanding that Abraham does of God until later, because she goes out when they run out of the food that Abraham gives them, and basically just gets ready to die.
Yeah, she starts crying, and Ishmael starts crying. I'd forgotten about that, you're right. Because they're out in the desert.
I'm wondering if she trapped him in a hole under a bush.
Why?
Because it says she places him under a bush. He's a teenager. He's not a baby.
Yeah, he's like 13 years old. You're right.
So, does she trap him so that way he will won't be able to see her die, or that she won't be able to see him die?
I never thought about that.
That's a question I have.
Question.
Because
why did he not get up and run to his mother? Because he was crying, and then she was farther away crying.
It says she put him under a bush. That's what the narrative says, and then she went a bow shot away so that way she wouldn't hear him dying, basically.
I don't know. That's horrible. That's so sad for her. So...
Unless they age differently, and he really wasn't that big at 13.
Oh. I didn't think about that. If Sarah looks like a young bride at 89, I wonder what a 13-year-old looked like.
A kid.
Like a little kid. Alright, so then we have the whole story of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And we know that God's commanded him to do that, and he obeyed. And then when he got there, God put a ram in the thicket so that he wouldn't have to sacrifice Isaac. that God just wanted to show that he would do it, and he proved that he would, and so God put a ram in the thicket, and that's kind of where I said we get the scapegoat, which may not be true, but that's what it made me think of when I was reading the story.
And the story also uses the language of take Isaac, your only beloved son.
Right.
Which is the same wording that is used in the New Testament for Jesus, who is God's only beloved son. And Jesus is the sacrifice that takes our place, whereas that goat or that ram is the sacrifice that takes Isaac's place. So it's definitely foreshadowing Jesus.
Exactly. So then we see that Sarah lived 127 years, and then she died. And Isaac was 37 when she died. And Abraham bought some land worth 400 shekels of silver and buried Sarah there in a cave. And we know later Ishmael and Isaac will bury Abraham there also. So Rebecca is who we end up seeing Isaac with. Abraham, before he dies, tells his servant to go back home to his family and to find Isaac a wife. So he takes 10 camels and he goes and he gets there and he prays. And he's asking God of my master Abraham, make this happen for me today and show kindness to my master Abraham. I'm standing here at the spring where the daughters of the men of the town are coming out to draw water. Let the girl to whom I say, please lower your water jugs so that I may drink, and who responds, drink, and I'll water your camels also. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. And before he had finished speaking, there was Rebekah. And I love that because it just shows us that God already knows what we need, and he already has it planned and already put in motion. And so that's a beautiful part of this thing that we've read this week. Also, once again, we see that Rebecca is a very beautiful woman. So guess what they're going to do? Isaac and her are going to do the same thing that his dad and mom did. He's going to say, when we go into these towns, you're so beautiful. Just tell them you're my sister and not my wife. And we realize that at least Abraham and Sarah were being deceptive because she was his sister, but she was also his wife. But Rebecca and Isaac, they're just lying because she is actually his cousin and not his sister. She's his cousin and wife. So they're just deceiving because they're scared people will kill them or kill him. But she was a beautiful virgin. And I read somewhere that she was possibly about 14 years old because we know that they usually married young. We know that Abraham was very rich, so he sent things with his servant to give her. He gave her a gold nose ring that was worth like half a shekel. And he gave her 2 bracelets which were worth 10 shekels of gold. And Rebecca was actually Abraham's brother's granddaughter, right? So
Abraham's brother's
granddaughter.
Rebecca.
Yeah, was his granddaughter. The granddaughter of Nahor.
But Nahor
was Abraham's brother. And then Rebecca had a brother named...
getting the genealogies correct is sometimes confusing.
Rebecca's brother was Laban, which we'll hear about later. And so the servant talks with her and asks to go back to her family's house, and she takes him back there, and he asks for her hand in marriage. And he gives the brother and the mother special gifts, like precious gifts. And he gives Rebecca silver and gold and garments. And I think this is kind of like a dowry.
It is.
And
he's paying her caretakers.
Yeah, and he's
giving them the dowry.
And he asked that they ask if she could stay 10 days, probably to say goodbye to everybody or whatever. But he says no, that he needs to take her back to his master Abraham, or actually to Isaac,
And since they took it, and since she agrees to go, then it's basically the wedding ceremony only needs Isaac's approval now, and then it's done.
Right, and they're married.
And then they're married.
And so Rebecca takes her female servants, and they leave out the next morning. And when they get there, the servant answered. Well, she asked, "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" And the servant answered, "It is my master," which he meant Isaac. So she took her veil and covered herself. And then the servant told Isaac everything he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah and took Rebekah to be his wife. Isaac loved her, and he was comforted after his mother's death. And I think his mother had been dead for about 3 years by this time. And then Abraham and Hardy remarried to Keturah.
Or Keturah.
Yeah, or Keturah. What?
Keturah.
Do we know what nationality she was? We don't really do.
Well, given that they are focused on staying within their family.
Probably somewhere.
Probably someone, but he didn't go back to his family.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
It was Isaac.
Keturah,
Isaac went back to his family.
That sounds...
So he might have married someone who is faithful and had joined his group, because he had a pretty large group.
It says that Abraham gave everything that he owned to Isaac, and he gave some gifts to the sons of his concubines. But he sent the concubines away from Isaac to the land of the east. Mm-hmm. And then Isaac was 60 years old when, Abraham lived 175 years, which was 38 years after Sarah died. And when he died, he was contented. I love that Bible tells us that. So Rebecca and Isaac, they have not had children as 20 years, and Isaac starts praying for Rebecca to get pregnant, and they get pregnant. But it took them 20 years, and they have a set of twins. They have Esau and Jacob. And Isaac is 60 years old when the twins were born. Esau is like a hunter, and Jacob is more like a homebody. I think Esau is like red and hairy and becomes like an archer. Is that right? An archer, I think.
He's a hunter.
Yeah.
So he would have used bows, but he would also use things like spears.
Now, Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebecca, and they waited 20 years. So he was actually, like I said, 60 years old when the twins were born. Oof.
Which would have been middle age.
Yeah. But, Abraham died, and we read that Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave with Sarah. Ishmael lived 137 years. He was 137 years old when he died. And like I said, Rebecca, once again, she was very beautiful, so they did the host thing every time they went in the cities. She's my sister, same lie that Abraham and Sarah told. And we think it's the same king, right? That Sarah and Abraham did this to.
Mm-hmm. King Abimelech.
Yeah, Abimelech. But he saw out the window Isaac caressing her arm.
Before anyone did anything.
Yeah. And then he said, y'all are not brother and sister, y'all are husband and wife. And you should have told me that before someone did anything. But he caught it, and nothing happened. Isaac sowed seed and reaped 100 times what was sown, so he became very wealthy also. He became so wealthy that the Philistines were envious of him, and they sent him away. They asked him to leave. There was a lot of quarreling during that day too.
They argued over wells until he finally found a well that they didn't want to argue with him over, and then he names that one Beersheba.
Mm-hmm. Which I wrote that down.
Or he names it either Sheba.
Beersheba.
Well, the city that gets built around it is called Beersheba.
Oh, he called it Sheba. You're right. All right. At 40 years old, Esau took Judith and Basemath as his wives. They were Hittites, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebecca.
I think one was a Hittite and one was a Hivite. If you read the actual text.
Nope, they're both Hittites.
Go read the text.
Right there and right there.
Hethite? Okay.
Yep, they're both Hittites. So, As we know, because I made a note over here, because I'm a mama, it said Rebecca did not want Jacob to marry a Hittite.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they did not like them, and I cannot blame them.
Probably not followers of Yahweh.
And because Esau realized that, I'm sure he became jealous and wanted, well, I don't want, if they hate my wives and they're going to get somebody better for Jacob and they want him to marry inside the family, I'm going to do that too.
I don't know if he was jealous. I think he just wanted to get the favor of his family.
Well, basically, that's jealousy.
Jealousy means you want what they have.
He did. He wanted his parents' approval of him, not just Jacob.
Okay.
Might be a little different. But anyway, Esau married the daughter of Ishmael, which would have been the granddaughter of
Can you say that name?
I cannot say that name. Can you say that name?
Show it to me again.
Mahalath? Mahalath was her name. The granddaughter of Abraham and the daughter of Ishmael. Now, Isaac and Ishmael, we don't know if they were even on good terms, so I wonder how he loved the fact that his son was going to marry the daughter of his half-brother.
Who made fun of him when he was growing up.
Mm-hmm. Got sent away because he was mocking him. So then next we see the whole dream thing of Jacob, where he gives a tenth of all he owns to God, and decides that God will be his God.
If he does those things.
And then, okay, so after that, Jacob and Esau fight. We know that Jacob basically got his birthright for a bowl of soup. He got his blessing because him and
Rebecca deceived
Isaac. And so then he leaves to go back to where they're from to get a wife. He meets Rebecca, his mother's brother, so his Uncle Laban. And he at the same time he sees Rachel, and she is very beautiful also. They got some beautiful women in this line of this family. And he kisses Rachel and weeps, and he falls in love with Rachel. And after a month, Laban asked, he said, just because you're family, I don't want you to work for me for free, but what wages can I give you? And he asked if he can have Rachel's hand in marriage. And Laban agrees, but he tricks him. On his wedding day, he switches her out for Leah. And they do wear veils, so that's probably how that happened. I mean, I don't know. Alex and I were like, could you not tell they had different body shapes? Because here it says Leah had tender eyes. In other words, she's probably homely with some pretty eyes or something. I don't know. But Rachel, they describe as shapely and beautiful. Shapely? If you're describing her as shapely and not her, couldn't you tell the difference in their body even if they had a veil on?
But dark.
It was dark, and they probably had been drinking. It's marriage ceremony. So anyway, so next morning he wakes up and he's married to Leah.
I love how the Bible puts it. It's like he wakes up and there was Leah.
And
Leah.
And so he's
upset.
It's on this page somewhere. When morning came, there was Leah.
There was Leah.
So he said to Laban, what have you done to me? Wasn't it for Rachel that I worked for you? Why have you deceived me? And I think it's kind of just punishment because he deceived his own brother. Well, he deceived his father and his brother. He deceived his father. So anyway, Laban gave Jacob Leah instead of Rachel, but in exchange for another 7 years of labor, he gave him Rachel after the week-long marriage celebration. And then Jacob took Leah and Rachel and their servants back to, where were they? Back to where they originally lived.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, and then God had so much compassion for Leah because
she was neglected.
She was neglected by Jacob. And so he began to give her sons. And so he gave her Reuben, and then he gave her Simon, and then he gave her Levi, and then he gave her Judah. And each time she'd say, maybe he's going to love me now.
To Judah. And then she's like, I'll just praise the Lord.
And then the last one, she's like, okay, I'm just going to praise the Lord for all these sons. But yeah, God blessed her with 4 sons because Jacob kept neglecting her. It was so sad. It just makes me sad for her. And then later we remember when we're going to go into next week that Rachel finally gets to have a couple of sons too. So, but those are the stories for this week. Did we miss anything? I'm sure we did, because that was a very, very quick summary.
I don't think we really had many questions.
We didn't really have a lot of questions this time. The questions from last week, the Nephilim and all that was kind of confusing, but this week's straightforward.
I want to know how old Ishmael was when she tried to abandon him in the wilderness by putting him under a bush. That's my question.
Okay. Can anybody...
And if any of you guys know the answer, please tell us in the comments.
So you want to know how old... No, he was 13, wasn't he?
But when they were kicked out.
Yeah, he was older than 13.
Then how is she able to trap him under a bush?
Well, he was older than 13 because he had already been circumcised by Abraham.
Of course.
What you mean is, was he young looking? Did they age differently? Was he a smaller person?
How big was this kid?
Yeah. And,
how big was this man?
Did she dig a hole? How did she trap him under a bush? Or did she just say, you stay here, and he obeyed?
Yeah, it could be the case. It says she put him under a bush. Yeah. That's all it tells us. And then she went
and
a bow
where is
shot
that?
away.
I forgot. Do you remember what verse it was?
I don't remember the verse. I just know that the actual passage is.
I remember that.
She gets ready basically to die, and she didn't want to hear him die. And so God sends an angel to tell her that he'll take care of them. Or maybe God talks to her directly. Either way, she names God El Roy, which means the God who sees.
Oh, here it is.
And when she names him El Roy, she's the only one who ever names God.
She does?
She names him El Roy.
Hagar?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
And El Roy means the God who sees.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that. Okay, so she says, or this is after Sarah said, I want them gone. Well, she said, this is very distressing to Abraham because of his son. This was very distressing to Abraham. Okay, she said, drive out this slave with her son, for the son of this slave will not be a co-heir with my son Isaac. This was very distressing to Abraham because of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed about the boy and about your slave. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her, because your offspring will be traced through Isaac. And I will also make a nation of the slave's son, because he is your offspring. Early in the morning, Abraham got up, took bread and a water skin, put them on Hagar's shoulders, and sent her and the boy away. I don't know why he didn't give them some money and a bunch of food.
What would money do?
I don't know. They could go to a different city and have a fresh start or something. I don't know.
This was a barter and trade culture. The money, they just traded gold. They traded cattle. They traded possessions. They didn't...
I'm just saying.
They might have had some currency, but it was not as important as we have today.
I'm just saying.
And he does give them food and water.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like a lot. It was bread and some water.
And she puts it on her shoulders. So it's in a bag.
So...
He basically gives her like a backpack filled with food.
Abraham got up, took bread and a water skin, put them on Hagar's shoulders, and sent her and the boy away. She left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she left the boy under one of the bushes and went and sat at a distance, about a bow shot away, for she said, I can't bear to watch the boy die. While she sat at a distance, she wept loudly. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What's wrong with Hagar? What? Don't be afraid, for God has heard the boy crying from the place where he is. Get up, help the boy up, and grasp his hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well. So she went and filled the water skin and gave the boy a drink.
Sounds like she trapped him somehow.
God was with the boy, and he grew, and he settled in the wilderness and became an archer. So I was right.
Sounds like she trapped him somehow, because it says, go help him up, take him by the hand. So like she somehow trapped him under a bush.
Well, God was with the boy, and he grew, and he settled in the wilderness and became an archer. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. So, yeah, I mean, I don't guess we'll ever know whether he was actually trapped or not, but it does say that.
No, it kind of implies that she did something to him to keep him under that bush. Maybe not trapped him, maybe dug a hole, put a bush over him, I don't know.
Well, she trapped him because he was crying and he didn't come to her.
Because it says, go take him by the hand, help him up, grasp his hand.
Get up, help the boy up, and grasp his hand. He could have just been on the ground under a bush.
But he would have been able to get up if he wasn't trapped. He's a 13-year-old boy.
So we think that maybe she found like a big giant bush that there was like a giant hole or something under.
She made a hole or a trap to keep him away from her, so that way she wouldn't have to listen to him die.
Ugh, I don't even
He was
know.
weak. He was already weak. It's pretty easy to trap a weak, dying little. I say little kid. They considered him a man, a young man at that point.
It's kind of sad. But then he becomes the father of all the Arabs.
Arabs.
Arabs. Arabs. Same difference. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much everything this week.
So, join us next week as we go over week 3, which is Genesis 30 through 50. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.